What would your idea of heaven be? If heaven could be whatever it is that would bring your heart complete and utter satisfaction and joy in every area of your life, what would heaven be like? But the caveat is it could not include financial wealth or many possessions, fancy cars, fancy houses, fancy clothes. How could heaven become everything that you need your eternity to be if it was without possessions and material things? Oh, that you had just what you need. You had a place to sleep and live in and cook. You had a place to lay your head. You had what you needed to get to and fro. You had wasn't fancy, just modest. You didn't have money in the bank. Whatever you needed was provided for you. You weren't famous. Everybody knew everybody equally. Everybody could sing. Everybody could write a song. Everybody could play ball. Everybody had a green thumb. Everyone could manage money well. Everyone could do everything equally. Now, based on that criteria, what would your perfect eternal heaven and paradise be? What would be the three things you would like to do often in eternity? What would be the first thing you would like to do forever in eternity? And for me, the first thing I would like to do is to see Jesus. For me, the thing that I always want to do that would make heaven completely satisfying and fulfilling is to spend time frequently with Jesus, to talk with Jesus, to talk with the Father. And the third thing I would like to do, be able to do that would make heaven just paradise for me, is to be able to travel with Jesus, to go around and check on the saints and speak encouraging words to them and fellowship with them and just travel the very corners of heavenly paradise with Jesus. Sometimes even flying with Jesus. And just go around and encourage one another. And then the fourth thing, Terry would go with me. And then the fifth thing, Jesus would often stop by and see my children because they were all so special to him. And they would prepare a great feast for Jesus and us and honor us. And we would love on them and be blessed by them and then go on to see some more unrelated saints. That would be heaven to me. If I never wrote another song, if I never sang, if I never created any work of art if I never did anything of great worth in anybody else's eyesight. If I never had a big house, or if we had a tiny house in heaven, or if we live van life in heaven, that would be all right as long as it's in heaven. And heaven would be wonderful as long as Jesus is there, because eternity without Jesus is not heaven to me. What makes heaven paradise is that the Father and the Son are there, that true holy people of God are there. That's what makes heaven wonderful. No more sin, no more guile, no more deceit, no more uncleanness, no more defilement, no more lies, no more false prophets and false teachers and false brethren, no more seductive women, no more angry men. And now, no more seductive men and no more angry women, no more rebellious children, no more abusive parents, no more abusive children and angry and rebellious parents. Oh, the tables turned. That's what heaven would be like to me. No more cliques, no more clubs, no more whispers, no more lies, no more hatred, no more isms, racism, sexism, classism, denominationalism. No more of that. Heaven is paradise. So what would you do if you could take none of this with you? If you went to heaven and you couldn't use your gift, you no longer had your gift above anyone else. You no longer had everything. Everybody had the same quality of everything. Nothing nor richer, nothing nor poorer. We were all equal. Would heaven be happy for you? What would you do in heaven if everything was equal between all of us? What if heaven means leaving everything earthly behind but yourself, but your soul, your most defining self? What if heaven meant no more you as you were on earth, because you will be given a new name. You will be no longer as mere mortals. You will be almost like the angels. What if heaven meant you left every earthly accomplishment behind? What if heaven meant everyone is the same, equally loved, equally esteemed, equally trusted, equally desired by God and by one another? What if paradise for eternity meant that everything you gained in the earth that's not spiritual could not make the transition? You had to leave it behind. What if paradise means you leave your degrees behind? Would you still want heaven? What if paradise meant you couldn't take your bank account? What if it meant you had to leave all your clothes behind that make you stand out, and everybody had the same robe, a robe of righteousness, a white robe of righteousness? What if everybody's hair was the same? Would you still want heaven? Would that be heaven to you? To know that my hair will be like everybody else's, so I don't have to get up and try to do something special to it. I can focus on being with Jesus and being with the saints that I love, that I don't have to try to impress anybody with my hair or satisfy anybody's expectations with my hair. What if heaven meant I don't have to have the degree to get needs met or to accomplish anything in heaven? Just a level of sanctification and holiness. Oh, just a greater degree of faith in God, that my education can't help me in heaven. It doesn't give me an edge in heaven, because heaven is equality. It's equal. What if you went to heaven? What if heaven required that you move out of a fancy house and you move into a house just like everyone else? Oh, you may be able to paint yours a nice color and do a little trim work or whatever, but it's no bigger and no smaller than anyone else's. The neighborhoods are all the same, because it's heaven. There's no ghetto in heaven. There's no project in heaven. There's no Peel Hill or Hollywood in heaven. There's no Rodeo Drive in heaven. And there's no goodwill in heaven. There's goodwill towards everyone, but there's no goodwill or there is the Salvation Army. Heaven is comprised of the Salvation Army, but there is no Salvation Army store. There is no thrift store. There's only robes of righteousness. What if you couldn't take your voice to heaven? What if all your songs that you've written could not go to heaven? You couldn't remember them anymore in heaven. Where would your esteem be? What if you couldn't sing and do those runs anymore in heaven? What if God chose someone else to sing and you had to do something else? Would you be happy in heaven? Or would you be disappointed? Or would just being with the ones you love and the one who loved you so much till you could love him back, would that be enough? And what if you had to leave the earth just a little earlier before you planned to go to heaven? Would you still want heaven? What if you got to heaven and everyone was equally beautiful, equally glorious, and you were not the beautiful one out of them? You were beautiful among the beautiful. You were all equally beautiful. What if you had no greater skill than anyone else? What if your skill in cooking was equal to someone's skill in farming, was equal to someone's skill in washing the robes or watching the children? What if it was all celebrated? What if everything everyone did to the best of their ability to the glory of God in heaven was equally celebrated, equally noted, equally appreciated? Would you still want heaven? What if there were no big eyes and little U's? What if there were no stars? Just saints, just humble, simple saints. Would you still want heaven? What if everything in heaven was gloriously, perfectly equal? What if the PhD had the same income, got the same wages as the high school dropout? What if the doctor, the medical doctor, made no more income than the newspaper delivery boy who showed up every day faithfully before light to deliver your paper? What if the stay-at-home mom made the same income, got the same recompense, the same reward as the CEO? And what if the one that's been saved for 50 years and the one that's been saved for 5 years were equally rewarded, were equally welcomed and honored in heaven? Would you still want heaven? Would heaven still be worth fighting for if heaven was perfectly, ridiculously, totally, yet gloriously equal? When none of us stood out, but all of us bowed before Christ. And all of us esteemed others greater than ourselves and loved one another. Is that your ideal of heaven? Or is heaven still your ideal, your lust of the earth, where you'll be the one before the throne all the time, crying, holy, holy? Will you be the one singing melody before the Lord with runs? Will you be the one offering your gift and expertise you learned in college and you learned from your jobs, where you will be appreciated, where you will be consulting the King of Kings and Lord of Lords about what's best for heaven, where everyone will know your name, where people will celebrate you, where you will not be lost in the crowd, where you will not be another face in the crowd to others. You certainly have never been to God. You could never be another face in the crowd. He shaped you in your mother's womb. He knew you intimately. But is that the kind of heaven you want? Where it's peace and joy all day long? No more tears, no more sickness, no more violence, even between the animals. The lion will lay down with the lamb, and a little child shall lead them. Is that your ideal of heaven? Where we return our swords into plowshares, because plowshares mean that we will still have occupations. We may not have the same one, but work is necessary for purpose, for existence. So we're going to change. Our names will be changed, and maybe even our occupations, maybe even our gifts and skills. Maybe we won't take the same gift to heaven. Maybe that gift was just for earthly ministry. What if that's what heaven was like? That everything you knew in the earth, you had to leave behind, and you knew it. That when you got to heaven, you opened your mouth and you couldn't preach like you used to. You couldn't sing like you used to. You didn't have that eloquence like you used to. You couldn't do the things you used to do with your hands like you. You can do things, but not like you used to do in the earth. You're not as intellectual and as intelligent as you were in the earth. Oh, you're intelligent because you chose the Most High God. That's an intelligent choice. But what would you do if heaven was so across the board equal? Could you stand not being a star to be the apple of his eye, one of many, to spending time with those so much like you? Do you still want heaven, if that could be heaven? Because what if heaven is not what you expected, but then it's what you always wanted? What if heaven is different than our earthly lust, ideals, and imaginations, concepts? And what if heaven is so different from that? And what if the main thing that you want from heaven is rest from the wicked, to escape the evil, and to live forever with the Son of God who loved us and gave his life for us, to spend eternity in his presence and in the presence of his holy people who will not hurt you ever again, and whom with people you can never hurt because you've been changed. What if that's the heaven that he has prepared for us? I know they said there's a mansion in his house are many mansions, but what if some of us don't feel like cleaning a mansion? We certainly don't want servants because we want everyone to be equal. But what if we just want enough to live and to be able to be with Jesus and at any moment? Not a high profile position, but just to be with Jesus, to be not to be number 2, but to be less than 2 feet away from Jesus. I mean, you could be 50 on his list, but just be 2 feet away from him at all times, in hearing distance, in touching distance. Oh, and smell the beautiful Savior that comes from him. What if that's what heaven is really all about?